on, folks? Here we are, back again. I am Carter Hammond, and this is Locally Sourced. Today is the local show. It's the 3rd of September, 2020. We are slowly slipping into total chaos, and our country is going to get really violent soon. So I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do this stream before I start fearing for my own life. But while we're at it, definitely take a minute to become a patron, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the little bell for the notifications, the whole spiel. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, yada, yada, yada. So get all that nonsense out of the way. All right, last night, folks, the formal resignation of Karen Hatcher from the Peterborough Select Board, which is a drag in a lot of ways. There's, I think there were very reasonable criticisms to be made, but it's, I've got Jonah on today, which is great. Crew. We've got crew with the show now. So Jonah, how are you, my dude?
I'm good. How are you, Carter?
I'm good. I'm
I'm loving the transitions, by the way.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
We're just upgrading that show quality. You know what I mean? Just gotta have it. Gotta have it. So, yeah, man. It's like, on the one hand, I think there was definitely a conflict of interest with Karen having her position and on the select board as well as the EDA position that she had. So it's like, look, I'm definitely not against that conflict being resolved, but I think on the other side of it, we're now in this weird tumult where we don't have an elected select board member. So, what did you had a chance to see this yet, or are you watching it for the first time today?
I have seen it. I watched it last night.
Okay,
not
cool.
live, but a couple minutes afterwards. Yeah.
Naturally. So, okay, we're going to just put this up and we are going to watch it here. But right. Generally speaking, I think. Oh, takeaways. When we did our stream last week, I think we probably, something we didn't consider, and I'm a little bit disappointed in myself for not thinking about this at the time, but in all likelihood, when it was first made public that Karen was going to resign, they probably already knew exactly what they were going to do. They probably had everything all lined up. They wouldn't say it publicly unless they hadn't. And so that's sort of we'll watch the video in a minute, but that's going to be the nut to crack. You know what I mean?
Yes, for sure. I've definitely been kind of reflecting on oversights made by all of us, for sure, in the private conversations we've had and the live show, because, that's the big one. That's the overarching one. And it should have been clear to us from the beginning, the way they were communicating to us, that there was some sort of plan already set in place, and they don't do anything public without, really considering that before. And we should have definitely thought about that a lot.
I mean, I think there's a desire on our part to want everything to be public, to have it be oh yeah, the first thing they do is tell people. But this, I think, it's
just not how it works at the end of the day with the select board. They are that group of people, and they have to abide by what they have to abide by. And
yeah, well, and it's not even it's not even limited to local politics either.
No.
What was it? Yesterday Sam Cedar had what's his name? I can't remember. He's a guy from the Stevens, I think is his name, from the Lincoln Project, and he was just grilling him about the Lincoln Project, and the guy was look, we're just trying to get Trump out of office, and he was you gotta be kidding me. Y'all are a bunch of political analysts, and your job is to think 7 steps ahead. So you're
right.
telling me that all you guys have thought about, you haven't actually thought past Donald Trump not being president anymore? Give me a break. So right. In that sense, it's we just have to expect that that's what's gonna happen. So at any rate, here is the video, and we'll just let it roll and do the thing.
Welcome to the Town of Peterborough Select Board meeting for September 1st, 2020. This evening, I'm Tyler Ward. I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. With me is fellow former almost Select Board member Karen Hatcher and fellow Select Board member Bill Taylor. We also have Town Administrator Rodney Bartlett and Deputy Town Administrator Nicole McStay. Our items on the agenda this evening will be to discuss the resignation of Select Board member Karen Hatcher. And we'll also discuss the appointment of an interim Select Board member. Under old business, we'll follow up on the discussion about Evans Flats, where we heard from the Affordable Housing Subcommittee of the Economic Development Authority a few meetings back. And then we'll review and approve some minutes from Select Board meetings of June 23rd, July 7th, and August 4th of this year. And then under other business, we have Rodney Bartlett with a few items to discuss, including what times we'll man the primary election as Select Board members. We all have to be there at certain times.
Man, that's just such a challenge for them figuring that whole thing out.
With that, our first item on the agenda.
Oh yeah, no.
Oh, and I should also
Agendas
mention, you're catching us on Facebook. You're lucky. Unfortunately,
who's going to be at the polls
this evening?
Right,
as well as Comcast Channel 22.
It takes like 3 seconds from to say it in the end,
major technical
anyway.
Difficulties, awaiting software and that sort of thing to get those two up and running.
No, it's silly. I mean,
as you noticed last night, we had difficulty.
It's very funny how much time on these board meetings is spent just like, all right, well, you know, I'm around in the afternoon, so I can be at the polls at this time.
A lot of agreeing. Yeah, that's funny how much agreeing there is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
I concur with you.
Yeah. With that, Karen, you would like to actually officially tender your resignation?
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. What I'd like to do is read my official letter of resignation. For those who have not been following the newspaper or Facebook, you know, I just want to officially read what I've written to the board. So I'll do that.
Thanks.
Okay, great. This letter is dated August 18th to Tyler Ward, Chair, and Bill Taylor, member of the Peterborough Select Board. Dear Tyler and Bill, I'm writing to officially tender my resignation from the Peterborough Select Board effective Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020. That's today. We all knew that my taking on the role of Community and Economic Development Coordinator alongside of my role on the Select Board would be a challenging balance. What we didn't and couldn't predict was the intensity and velocity of issues being presented that would consistently merge the two roles as they called on us to address them. Over the last several months, I have found it extremely...
I'm sorry, didn't see it coming?
Yeah, that's, you know.
Again, like, you know, no harm towards Karen or anything, but didn't see it coming as like not, COVID was happening, I do believe, before this job was created. Like, if I'm not mistaken, I would have to go back and look at the dates, but I'm pretty sure like maybe the protests, George Floyd, might have happened afterwards, but we've been in coronavirus this whole time. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to remember when Pete left. It was like, oh,
I thought it was like late March that they announced Karen would be on the Economic Development Fund. I could be very wrong about that, but the way I, you know, but still, it's like these issues, most of the issues we were dealing with at this time were around. I mean, I guess I agree with the velocity of the issues. It has ramped up. We're in the election season. Issues ramp up in the election season. It's a much more contentious election season. But all of these issues were on some level being discussed even before coronavirus. Like the
Oh yeah.
There were racism activists even before coronavirus and all these things. It's just now that they're paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And that's such a weird comment.
Yeah. Yeah. I just,
again, but yeah, none of this is ill will towards Karen though,
right,
at all. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's like, to me, it's just like, you like, I think the thing for me is like, you didn't see there being conflict of interest there.
Right.
No, like, just, we're not gonna.
When you first created the position.
Yeah. Like, it's like,
just,
I feel like that could have, I feel like there are plenty of people that discerned that was the case early on. And then I feel like no one wanted to like deal with that reality. Because it, looks nice, I guess. It's like, it's a good thing. Oh, this, we have this person who's working so hard to help our community. We need to be supportive, so on and so forth. But realistically, it's like, hey, that, like, I don't know anybody that could handle those two jobs simultaneously, even if there wasn't a conflict of interest. You know what I mean? Like, that's just too much work.
Right.
So I don't know.
Right.
I think
for the select board, both of those jobs, I would want someone fully committed to them. I don't want someone splitting their time between both of those jobs to
absolutely
do it. Not that Karen was doing a half-assed job on either of those things, but that's what could easily become the reality if you give those jobs to the same person, the two jobs to the same person that are so important to the community.
And additionally, Karen is totally the type of person who's like gonna jump in head first on a problem and like really get into it. So like, yeah, I don't know, maybe that's like your heart being bigger than your stomach type of a problem. I'll probably get in trouble for using so many metaphors all the time, but like, it's just, biting off more than you can chew type of a deal. Right. So anyways, we'll keep it going.
Extremely difficult to navigate between the two in a way that honors my commitment to full transparency. Because the two roles have been so connected, I've also not been able to regularly find places in my life for essential breaks in the action, to recharge and recenter, to recapture my joy, so necessary to my balance as a human being and my effectiveness as a public servant. I have appreciated getting to work with and come to know each of you as people and committed members of this community. We have shared our humanity with a deep level of mutual respect and willingness to have hard conversations on issues that matter. Ours has been a true working select board, an experience I count as a gift in my life. I remain enthusiastically committed to the work of building a strong and resilient Peterborough, working with you as a member of the staff to help guide our town through the myriad challenges that never seem to end. I will also continue in my volunteer efforts with the Welcome Team, the nonprofit network, and the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project, and others that call me to service. I'm proud of the work we've done together, and prouder still to call you each my friend. Sincerely, Karen.
Well, I suppose though, as chair, I have to accept that resignation. Unfortunately, we did really discuss the two roles and your importance to the town, and I really didn't want to lose you as a select board member, but understood that the other role is so vital to what we're doing in town right now. So I understand your conundrum, and I do accept it. And I just want to say thank you so much for the commitment you've given to Peterborough and the time on the board. It's been a pleasure for me for sure. And I've learned a lot from you and look forward to continue working with you.
All right.
Thank you.
We can like let Bill say his piece in a minute, but I think, so Tyler just explained more or less exactly what the problem with the situation is, right? Or like, no, I get it. I get that like this is not good and they're struggling right now because there's a ton on their plate, and the idea of trying to do the job with 2 selectmen as opposed to 3 is really daunting. Cool. I get it. We got to deal with that. On the flip side of it, we did not know anything about how they were making their decision process. Now, granted, the state law itself that governs this basically just says like they can make the decision. Like they don't have to confer with the public. You know what I mean? Like there's no legal impetus for that to happen. They just can go right for it. But it's about like, I guess, showing a sign of good faith, in my opinion. When it first came up, I mean, I don't know what's your take on this? How do you deal with that? Because like, there's part of me that's like, well, if you come out and say, we have a selectman leaving and we don't really have a plan, like that could create a certain level of insecurity or uncertainty with the town leadership in like from the people of the town, the voters. So I could see that they're being like, what are you guys just like shooting from the hip over there? But at the same time, when they do this kind of collection stuff, it's like we all now know very clearly that there were private conversations that happened outside of this context where they were making decisions about what they were going to do. And they, you know, like they wanted to have all those ducks in a row before they went public with it. So like for you, what's the balance there?
I mean, it seems like they were going for like perfection, or like it just seems like they were trying to make it seem like they are totally in control of the situation, which it's, I think that like, yes, don't come out as a town leader saying you have no plan. Like,
right.
Say we're either crafting a plan or, you know, like give us some semblance of you're working towards fixing the issue, but also don't not lie to us, but like tell us that your plan is perfect, because it obviously isn't. We're in a situation of a lot of chaos in town. There's a lot of tension in town, and I don't think anyone's making a perfect decision right now. Even in the activist work that we do, there's a lot of imperfect decisions. I think almost every single one of them has been imperfect, but like it's our transparency on that imperfection that makes it great, because it's through that we can learn, grow, and then make better solutions from those mistakes that we've made. And I think that same thing has to apply to the town government. That same thing has to apply to what they're doing here. And if they had just come out and said, look, Karen is resigning, I think there needs to be an open and transparent process. Not, you know, they did mention, and I think we'll hear it, we're not going to like leave it open to the town and have suggestions. Although if we were in a different situation, maybe we would have done that, but we have to deal with the budget and all these other things. And I do understand that. I do get that there is like work that needs to be done by the select board, but I think that the public should have been involved more on this decision than they would have. They should have been told of the process beforehand. We asked about that process and were given no, like, I think Zach was the one that officially had asked, emailed them about the process. He was not given an answer on that. And if people were given an answer on the process, I think we would be feeling a lot more comfortable about this decision. We would understand what that process was, what the conversations that took place were, and we would just fully understand the situation instead of just being like getting an email saying, wait till September 1st, having to delay that obviously for technical decisions, and then September 2nd announcing that Egg Youngst is the select board without any preparation for that at all, other than just attend the meeting. And I think there's a lot of very kind of obvious problems with that could have been fixed by just kind of stepping back and not seeking to look perfect in the eyes of the public and just being 100%.
Yeah, and my general understanding, and we'll get to it too because they talk about it here, but you know, they talk about how they're, you know, they're bringing on Ed Youngst, and he's sort of like, actually, you know what, we'll do the clip and I'll say all this stuff afterwards because it'll make more sense in context. So all right, let's go for it.
Continue working with you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Bill, anything?
Yeah. I echo those feelings, and I think recognizing and, you know, stepping down from the select board is probably one of the most honorable things I've ever seen somebody do.
Okay.
Like really taking one for the team, and I could appreciate it no end. And I'm real sad to see you go too. Real sad. You had quite a gig going there for a while.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
Well, thanks, Karen. I'm sure you'll see Rodney and Nicole around. So
I'm sure I'll see all of you around for sure. Yeah.
She does
Okay,
work in
so
the
with
same
that,
building after all.
Our next, obviously, the next step is for the remaining select board members to appoint an interim board member. And so when we received Karen's letter of resignation, we thought about the current conditions with the pandemic and its challenges. We did receive some great recommendations to fill the position. But considering that the process to put out a call to interested citizens could be lengthy, we do have a budget season coming up on us quickly where we'll see obstacles relating to revenue shortfalls, no doubt. This job is quite a commitment with the weekly operations of the town and the various liaison duties that we all carry as well. Not to mention the unforeseen issues that arise like the COVID-19 virus and the challenges of supporting town admin in their duties with the daily issues that do arise. It really takes a good year to get in the groove and get a handle on this, on what a select board member does. I know I had a bit of a learning curve when I first started, and that was after having, participated in our town government for some time before. So with that, we discussed this with town council, and we have decided to ask a former board member to join us for the next 8 months, figuring it should be up to you, everybody who's watching, and tell your friends, the voters, to elect someone new at town meeting in May, if you so choose. We felt that that should be put in your hands and not ours to select somebody new. In the meantime, we'd like to encourage anyone that is interested in running for the board to attend as many meetings as possible, read up on the minutes for the meetings for the last year or two, just to get an idea of what's been happening if you haven't seen it all. Join the budgeting process this fall for sure. It's pretty in-depth. You learn everything about each department and what they're up to and what they're spending money on. And get to know town administration. And then get your campaign hat on and get out and hit the pavement, and we'll get together with one of you in May. So with that, I'd like to nominate, and he actually said yes when we called him, I'd like to nominate Ed Youngst back to the select board for an interim position.
I enthusiastically second that.
Okay. So there we go.
Enthusiastically.
Yeah. So, okay. Here's the thing. Ed Youngst. And before I while we're sort of at it, this is Ed Youngst's profile on the Greater Peterborough Chamber of Commerce page. So this is like, as far as sources go, this is probably the best quick bio that we're going to get. And it basically reads as follows. I can try and zoom in on this a little bit. Okay, so Ed currently serves as a member of the Peterborough Select Board and Planning Board, so this is clearly an old write-up. And I sure as hell wish we had a date on it, but we don't, clearly. Because it's just a bio. And the Peterborough Chamber of Commerce has had their own serious managerial problems. But at any rate, so we can deduce from this that Ed he's absolutely been on the select board, but he has also been a member of the planning board, liaison to the EDA. So basically doing the same stuff that Karen is doing in her job, and is a member of the Peterborough Kiwanis Club. He has a long history of being active in public community service. During the period from 1996 through 2004, Ed also served as a member of the Peterborough Select Board, was a member of the Peterborough Greater Peterborough Chamber of Commerce and the Peterborough Rotary Club. He served twice as the chairman of the Greater Peterborough Chamber of Commerce and Business and Community Expo. Ed completed the Leadership Monadnock program in May of 2000. While living in Arizona, Ed volunteered on numerous committees and was a board member in a very large active adult homeowners association. Oof. Ed operated his own business in Peterborough from 1996 to 2004, providing individuals and business clients with tax preparation, business counseling, accounting, business brokerage, and business valuation services. Previously in his corporate career, Ed was executive vice president of operations with CCM Masca in Peterborough and with New Balance Athletic Shoe in Boston. In his early career, he held information technology management positions in 2 large apparel and shoe companies, holds degrees in computer science and business administration, and he served 2 terms in the Air Force. So basically, Ed is your classic old white guy.
Pretty much.
Like,
old white, you know,
wealthy,
classic old white liberal.
Right.
Yeah.
And my guess is that he,
I mean,
like,
I don't like to I do not like to characterize people like that, but it is the situation we faced with that appointment for sure.
It's not.
It's just kind of the reality. It's just like,
yeah, and we're not trying to reduce him. You know what I mean? But
no, right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Like, I'm sure Ed's a great guy, and here, so like context, right? It says in here that he was on the planning board, and my understanding is that Ed helped to craft and get the town neighborhood overlay districts, which like we've been fighting for in this town for like the past 2 years. Everybody's been trying to get that shit repealed, and it's like, and TNOZ2 got repealed anyways, like just like on default. Like there was something wrong with the way it was written. They were like, nope, this is invalid. It's like, okay, cool. So but he helped structure that. So I think there's a certain amount of like, he may be exactly what what like young progressive activists in Peterborough don't want. You know, like, not necessarily, it's not like we're replacing Karen with like some crazy Trumper person, like some crazy Trump supporter, right? Like, but it's, you know, he's like their pinch hitter. Like anytime there's a vacancy, they hit up Ed and they're like, hey man, come back. Like, we need your help for a little bit. And he's like, okay, cool. So, you know, like, it's, the thing is, this is part of like just the small town Yankee New England rhythm, right? Like anytime something like this happens, this is our fail safe. And it's not necessarily bad in the sense that, like, I mean, I don't know if this is true or not. I heard that Youngst was supposedly supporting Velensky, which would be pretty snazzy IMO. Like, cool with that.
I would love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no problem here. Yeah.
The thing about it is, if, you know, I like, for anybody who doesn't know, my mom used to be a state rep, right? And Jonah, you've actually had the opportunity to meet and hang out with my mom.
Yes, we had a very nice car ride from Concord to Peterborough. I loved it.
So,
I didn't even know it was your mom until you told me like a couple weeks ago.
So, but at any rate, I like, it is very, very commonplace for me to like have like a weekly to bi-weekly political debate with my mother on the phone. Like, it's not even necessarily that we disagree. We just like, it just happens. And I was talking to her about it, and, you know, she was like, she had mentioned to me, oh, well, you know, like, if Ed is supporting Velensky, my suspicion would be that's because the property tax burden is just way too high for everybody. It's really bad in Peterborough, though. And the select board, like, think about this. Think about how often, like, people are haranguing the select board about how high their property taxes are. like just banging their door down, angry as hell that their property taxes keep going up. Like that's like one of the most hot button issues. And Velensky's out here like, I want to deal with the property tax. We need to do something drastic. I'm not going to take a pledge.
Right.
Like,
you got the sign with the scissors through it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
So the idea is like selectmen are getting slammed so much by their local constituents that all of a sudden you've got selectmen turning around to the state government and going, dude, not cool. Like, you guys have to deal with this. And a senator, right? Like, which is, you know, for anybody that watched yesterday's stream, it's, you know, basically where decent legislation goes to die by older, more affluent people's crappy proofreading. They're more likely to listen to a selectman or a mayor or somebody that's holding an office in a town than they are like Joe Schmo working at McDonald's, right? So that is, if you fold it back over, that's like exactly the reason why all of the intense activism that we've been doing in the community, what would ultimately pressure, say, some, you know, like things to get so intense that somebody who's taken on, you know, too much on the select board has to resign. The fact that that's a function of it, right? Like, they're strapped. They need solutions from the top, right? So like now what we have is we have this sort of like lower management going to middle management and being like, hey, assholes, deal with this problem. So I'm thinking there's part of me that's like, okay, so the continued pressure is going to be effective in the sense that we can anticipate that our select board will probably turn around to the state and say, you need to figure this out, and it'll help to square more progressive candidates on the state level to get the type of, you know, less regressive forms of taxation done that we need in order to get out of the hole. As far as Ed goes, I don't know, man. Like, it's probably going to be 8 months of like sitting around, this. I feel like in a lot of ways this hit the pause button on us being able to like get anything meaningful done for the next 8 months.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I also worry that it's an unintended dog whistle to the pro-America, pro-police crowd when it was very clear that we as activists had stood up and said we would like the things to be shaken up. We would like a new person in the select board. We would like you to listen to us and respect our opinion. Those people are also watching. They're very engaged in this town because they have a stake in the town being shaken up and the boat being shaken and the boat being rocked. And I think that this kind of maintaining of the status quo only aims to embolden them and further the divide between both of us, which just creates so much more tension going into a presidential election where that tension already exists. So when that tension gets translated to a local level and people can apply that same tension that they have towards Biden and Trump to Ed Youngst and the Black Lives Matter activists, that's when you have a really dangerous situation in town where it could bubble over very quickly. And, you know, I don't want to say chaos could ensue, but like something like bad things could happen at that point. Like if there's a lot of tension and boils over, bad things could happen at that point. And when you have 8 months of the pause button, when the pause button has been the solution for decades, I think people will get tired of that. And I think our quiet community could turn very, very quickly. And like by not listening to their constituents and respecting what the activists were saying, not that they don't respect or listen to us in that sense, but by not engaging with us on like a person-to-person level on this very important process that has taken place over the last couple of weeks, they have created a situation in which a lot more tension could arise where they had an opportunity to mitigate a lot of that tension. They could have actively worked to solve that. And instead they did not. And instead they took the pause button solution, which will bring us to a very unfortunate spot, I believe, in the next.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and that's so part of what I wanted to do here was do like a little bit of a strategy session, right? Because like, so there's like sort of like the opportunity that we basically missed would be to have some sort of special election for the seat in the middle of all of this nonsense before November, right? So
that's the solution I was hoping for, especially when we read out the RSA and that's a part of the law. They could have just defaulted to that special. That's not the exact way it would have happened, but they could have just defaulted to the special election, and we could have had that before November, where the town would have been able to. I mean, that's what elections are for. It's that outlet for the tension that rises in a society, and we could have had that outlet on the local level and let the people decide, and it would have happened in the next couple of months, and they decided not to do that.
And I'm sure their mindset was like, that's just too much work for us right now. We can't handle adding another whole election on top of the election that we're already dealing with, which they talk about having, you know, they're already just having a hard time finding who's going to man the polls for it. But so there's this one situation of like, all right, if for some reason the select board had decided, no, what we're going to do is we're going to adopt this other bit of legislation. I think it was 66961 part. Fuck, I don't even know what, but
bunch of Roman numerals, some semicolons.
Yeah, a bunch of nonsense, like part 40 or some stupid shit. But anyways, if they could, in a sense, what they could have done at that meeting was instead been like, we're going to adopt this and we're going to get the ball rolling on a special election right away. We didn't do that. Now, what that means is that like you've got either a special election now during an election season, which is chaotic, no doubt, but it does mean that the math for a local election to replace a resigning select board member, which is not the same thing as like running against an incumbent select board member. Like now all of a sudden there's just a vacant seat, and it's not like I don't think Ed's gonna run for the spot. Like, so what that means is it's wide open. And that means that whatever the hell happens in November is going to seriously affect the outcome of how, or sort of like maybe not the outcome, but the dynamic, the chemistry of that race in February, March, April, like leading up to it, right? All that space in between there where people are starting to sort of get it in their heads about what they want to do, file for it, what have you. Now, I would venture to guess that, you know, here's my prediction for the Peterborough primary on Tuesday. We're going to see Ivy and Peter take the same seats that they've always had. I think that's just going to happen. I personally don't.
Are they facing a Democratic primary challenge? Oh, right.
Judy Furstenberg.
Yeah. Judy Furstenberg. Forgot about that.
Yep. So I don't think that I do not think that Judy is going to make it through that primary. I just don't. I think the reason for why she's running is not enough to offset her significantly less than progressive values. I mean, she was right up until the election a co-chair of the Peterborough Republicans. So, you know, within context. But I genuinely believe she's going to lose the primary. She's seeing what just happened, and she's going to go for that vacancy. I'd put money on it. So there's one aspect of it. Now, what I would say is, depending on who wins the presidency, right? Who wins November, like that, and this is the thing, like the national stuff is going to affect us in a really serious way. And if I think the way that we as the left on a local level, right, need to be thinking about this is we need to form two strategies. We need to form a strategy to get our person in if Biden's president, and we need to form a strategy to get a person if Trump is president. If Trump's president, it's going to be a lot harder. Like, it's just generally because we are going to see a huge disempowerment of the left, particularly the center left. I think the more left parts of it are going to be like, we told you, but which is sad. Yeah. But I think there's going to be a lot of like there are a lot of people that are going to be like, the world's going to end now. Like, it's just over. Like, we're done. This is going to turn into a fascist
especially
state.
In that first couple of months after, if it's Trump being re-inaugurated, it'll be a storm for sure. That first couple of months. And we'll be having an election right after.
Like, does anybody remember the first few months of 2017? Like, it was a mess. It was a mess. It was so bad. It was so bad. And if anybody really thinks that if Trump wins again, it's going to be any different, forget it. So there's if Trump wins, there's going to have to be a huge effort on the part of local activists here in town, not only to isolate a candidate that makes sense to run. We need to even right now, starting today, right.
I was just about to say, I think we sort of need to start that conversation on who that candidate is right now. Cause even they brought it up in the thing, they have to get ready to be the select board person.
Exactly.
And obviously the person we're thinking about is someone who generally probably hasn't been in town government, someone new who is ready to get in there and start doing what we'd like to see as the left, for sure. And that
Precisely.
Conversation would need to start happening now.
Right. So sort of step one, regardless of outcomes, we need to find a candidate. That's the very, very first step, is find a progressive candidate. So, to that end, I know I'm interested in helping solve that. Jonah, I'm sure you're probably interested too. So anybody can feel free to hit us up, and we will work with you to try and figure out how to get some actual solid, a solid replacement for Karen, because the reality is she was probably one of the more Tyler is quite progressive, I will say that about it, but I think Karen was identifiably out there, very much so forward on being social justice oriented, all of those aspects of things. She definitely
very willing to help, open.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's we want, not only do we want to replace that, but I think we can do even better too. I think that there's space to have somebody that's even closer on the issues to where we're at. So,
and I think the town is now ready for that too. The town is now 100% ready for that.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think that and that's the thing, is that if Trump wins, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to work with that candidate to really galvanize people in town and be like, you know what, if this country is going to hell in a handbasket, we'll be damned if we let our community go with it. At the very least, we can try and create some sort of the best kind of insulation that we can form. Although I think there's, it's, the conversation will shift, and I think there's going to be a lot of setting us within the context of our region and our state and the broader New England. I think there's conversation to be had around expressing the value of the community of communities. So that might be something to focus on, especially when we're trying to with the water situation, where we're trying to team up with Jaffrey to get new water for town, right? A new water source, stuff like that, where we definitely have to band together. If you look at the school funding thing with Conval and the fact that was ultimately a bunch of other districts joined that lawsuit. So that's
a huge part of it.
Right.
We have to and Peterborough is in a special that's a weird way to put it, but it's in an opportunity. Peterborough like is in a position where it can bring together these other towns, like it is with Jaffrey, and bring together these other towns using the power of Peterborough just to do that and bring together the communities to do exactly what you're talking about. Sure.
Yeah, and I think, and I think the fact that Peterborough has the high school in it, I mean, I think the fact that Conval is in Peterborough and that 9 towns go to it, like, I think that has an effect with the town of, like, this is a joining place for multiple communities. Like, a lot of communities go to meet in Peterborough, and then they do whatever they're going to do from out of there. Like, it's a central location, And so, yeah, I completely agree with that take that we have this sort of like community ethos in town, and we can leverage that through town leadership. And it's something that already Tyler and Bill are interested in doing. We see Bill going for that with the broadband, him trying to reach beyond the community to deal with broadband stuff. So it's not like it's not already present, but that's the type of thing that we want to hone in on.
That's the type of thing we have to run on. And then if we're trying to beat a candidate like Julie, we have to have the left running on on a vision like that. And it has to be, forward thinking and unifying in the sense that we're going to bring together these different communities and and make some real tangible changes, because we understand and recognize that we can't do it as one town. We have to kind of recognize that we are a hub, like you just said, we are a hub of many different towns that come here, and we have to integrate those towns in the solutions we're talking about, because they're integral to what we do here in town.
Exactly. So I think now on the flip side of it, if Biden wins, which is like, I'm not, like, I don't love the guy, but I'd certainly rather him than Trump. But if Biden wins, there's a few different things to keep in mind. One, the conservatives in town are going to be real pissed. Like, real pissed. And if we don't like their pro-cop rally now while they have the guy that they want in White House, it's not going to get any better when he's out.
I mean, just think of like what the reaction was when Obama won, not necessarily in town, but just like across the country. It's going to be that, but it's going to be even more so. It's going to be Kamala Harris is his vice president. He's going to be announcing black women into his cabinet. It's going to be very intense for a very long time.
Yeah, it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna be great. I'm not.
And not that any of that stuff that I just outlined is a bad thing either. No, Biden should definitely keep doing that, and I think he should even go further with that. But it is going to result in a lot of backlash from the pro-police crowd.
Yes, definitely. And then I think the other side of it too is that we on the left also need to remember that the moment Biden gets, if he does get elected, the moment he gets elected, the center is going to look at it and they're going to say, look, see, it's validation that the middle is the way to go. And you shouldn't go the Bernie Sanders track. You shouldn't go the Elizabeth Warren track. You shouldn't go the Andrew Yang track. Like, this is, it will be the reaffirmation of the neoliberal agenda. And realistically, I think it's no diss in him, but it's very, in my opinion, fine to say that Ed Youngst probably represents that sort of like neoliberal, like older white, constituency. And that group of people is going to feel especially empowered. So what that might mean is that we see at least 3 candidates for the select board seat. We see some sort of moderate. We see some sort of conservative, like, my guess is that will be Judy. I wouldn't be surprised if like Chris Maidman decides he wants to go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say Chris. And I think it's also we could see a situation in which like there's a couple of different variations of each of those things. I think I think it is going to be a moderate conservative left divide. But if we don't come together as the left, there's a big possibility that two people are like, oh, we need to both run for this position, and then that happens, or it's like there could be different. Like the open seat thing makes it so like a lot of people, there could be a lot of people running, and I think that like there is a decent amount of interest in the job in town.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
And so like my thing is like it's weird at this particular moment with the primary on Tuesday because we don't know the outcome of that primary. You know what I mean? What I would say is that I think and then we also need to see how the general goes, but like here's another factor to consider. What like if things get way easier for us, way easier for us if we have a Governor Velensky? That's just like in terms of getting folks in town to like wrap their head around like we have to leave behind these antiquated neoliberal solutions and find more progressive solutions. Like if we can like a Governor Velensky would be a very big signifier to that. It's a really big.
Right, it'd be the same thing. Like it would be the affirmation of our ideals on the state level, and then it would be sort of what the same thing like you were saying with Biden. It would just be applied to the progressive ideals on the state level. And you know he's going to do like if Velensky was governor, we're going to get a lot of. I do believe we're going to get a lot of things done, and I think that's going to be an even further affirmation of the vision that we're talking about and the
especially if the House and Senate stay blue too. That's the other thing.
Right.
I mean, we always need to remember that that's the factor that you got to consider, that basically we're not getting anything done unless it's like blue across the top. But I think
even then there's going to be some.
Oh yeah. It's like that's and I've got other interviews plus other ones lined up that already detail that. Like it's pretty bad. But I think, you know, and it's like my attitude is kind of like, okay, well, if we have a Governor Velensky, that could counter the success of the neoliberal agenda with a Biden elected lead. You know what I mean? Like if Biden's in charge of the country and we get a Velensky, then it makes it easier for us to push back on neoliberal ideas because we can say, well, look, like, you know, maybe Biden won nationally, but this is like we chose the progressive guy. So you got to understand that we're in a different place. If Feltus wins, it doubles over. So that's just more reaffirmation that the center perspective is the one to go with. So that's like, and I think either one of them is a very uphill battle, right? Like there's in any of these situations, like the most ideal for us would be Biden president, Velensky governor. Bar none. That's just the best setup for us as far as if we want to get a very progressive, socially justice-minded, people-oriented, labor-prioritized candidate running in that select board seat. That dynamic of Biden-Velensky on the state level is going to really help us. I just, as much as I want that to be the outcome, I don't know how promised it is. Velensky's numbers are good right now. He beat Feltus on funding last quarter, which was dope, and I think he's according to data he released. I don't know, I'd have to look into it a bit more, but according to data that Velensky released, he's now leading in all of his polls. So
I think I saw them as Facebook or something like that this morning.
Yeah.
So, and you know, Steve Marchand wasn't leading polls last time, right? I mean, he lost by like 30 points or something like that. So it's a little bit more promising going into the election than the Molly Kelly versus Steve Marchand race, but there is still that big unknown.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's, you know, I think it's, man, I wish that people paid more attention to debates. Like, I really, really wish people paid more attention to debates.
That debate, I saw it. Oh God, the debate was frustrating because it's just, I was frustrated for Andrew. I could just feel that, like, you did a very good deep dive on it. I watched a little bit, like 20 minutes of it, but like,
I loved
Veltis is just such a robotic person. Oh my God. I can't stand, I'm sure if I had a conversation with Dan Feltus, and I think I have a very quick conversation with Dan Feltus, he's a much more personal person. But when he's on the camera and all of his ads, it's all like,
he just we're gonna stiffens up,
Peterborough, and it's like, oh, what are you doing? That's not gonna beat Chris Sununu. That's just
right.
When he's on a debate stage, a virtual debate stage, or an in-person debate stage with Chris Sununu, and he's acting like that will not beat Chris Sununu in New Hampshire at all.
Yeah.
And Velensky just has to sit there and take just him not answering the question a lot of those questions, Dan not answering the question, and then getting attacked by Dan as soon as Andrew answers the question. And then in a lot of those instances, the moderator will let Dan attack Andrew. Andrew responds, Dan responds, then they move on to the next question. They did the same thing with Bernie. They would just let the progressive candidate answer the attack once and then conclude that attack with the moderator answering and being like, and that's it, and then moving on to the next question.
And there was, like, for my part, I thought Velensky did damn well in that debate.
He did very well.
Slaughtered.
For all of those things stacked against him, he slaughtered in that debate.
Yeah.
He was just on the property taxes, on all of it, racism, all of it. He was so good.
He was right there.
Yeah.
And
made me proud to support Andrew.
Something that I was watching it, and I remember thinking to myself, like, man, I wish Bernie had done this stuff in his debates. Like I wish it so bad, because there's a thing that comes up at one point in that debate where, Dan's going on about, like, we're not attacking anybody, and Andrew's just kind of like, we're making no bones about it. Like, we are attacking people. Like, what do you think? Yeah. Of course we're attacking people. That's what this is. And
this is an election. Yeah.
Right.
You're supposed to beat the other candidate. Yeah.
And he just, like, there were a number of times where Andrew just stomped on the moderators and was like, no, like, I'm not going to let you break to the next question right now. Like, you asked this guy a question, he didn't answer it, and then just attacked me with something that was false instead. So not only am I going to debunk it, but I'm also going to ask him to answer the question that you asked him that you won't press him to answer. It's silly.
And that's what people want out of their politicians.
Right.
They want just a real person who, like, just dismantles the game that's being played on all of these levels. And it's just, Andrew is doing a really good job at it. And like, seeing that reaffirmed with him winning these polls, it does make me hopeful about his success in the primary. I think people see him as, like, the Bernie type figure that we would need on the state level. And I think that could play well.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think, after Marchand, I'm obviously, like, very timid about making a decision one way or another, but I definitely have, looking at the data right now, there seems to me to be a big difference between the two campaigns where, like, yeah, sure, Steve totally wiped the floor with Molly during their debate sessions, but again, like I said, I wish more people paid attention to debates. People don't. And, like, that super sucks. That super sucks for everybody, because the biggest difference between, in my opinion, right? Like, you can go down the list of issues and you can point at what, Andrew is more progressive on than Dan or whatever. But the big difference between the two candidates to me is about their origin and their relationship to the governor's seat. And Andrew comes from an arm of the government which is very antiquated. It's this holdover from the late, 19th century or what, you know, or early 19th century, late 18th century, somewhere around there. That it's like they just provide a check on the governor. They kind of approve everything that he does. They oversee his work. So Andrew's been auditing the governor for a while. And what he understands is what's cool and not cool to do, who the governor should and should not be talking to, yada, 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 right? There's all of this sort of like procedural stuff that Andrew's going to get about being governor. Dan comes at it from the insider baseball political legislative process, which is just mired in party crap. I'm sorry. I wish that I could be more creative in my description here, but it's crap. It's just a long stream of wasting my time, and all of our time, really. So, and that's what Dan did in that that debate, was just waste a whole lot of time making very, very poorly framed attacks that didn't quite make sense. And for me, I was like, who's advising this dude? You know, like who's the one who said this is what you should attack on in the debate? Right. I didn't get that at all. I didn't understand why you thought those were good talking points, but whatever. The moral of the story is that, one, we want to be considerate of potential outcomes in both the presidential and the gubernatorial races, right? Not just in the primary, but in the general for the gubernatorial. So we want to be considerate of that in relationship to setting ourselves up while preparing a candidate to run for select board in Peterborough on the issues that we care about. Because those outside political forces are going to greatly affect our success with that in town. Peterborough has already shown that it's incredibly susceptible to national narratives, right? Like, just the fact that this town, in any direction, whether it's right wing or left wing, we as a community on the left became super fired up and engaged when George Floyd was killed. That's just something that happened. It got more active at that moment. And on the flip side, you've got all the conservative people that are now having their backlash because we were like, hey, we're going to protest this. And they're triggered because that's what happens with conservatives. Just getting triggered a lot. So basically, it's just that kind of understanding that we are consistently susceptible to that national narrative, that it is going to affect how we run hyper local races, and it's probably worth leftists in Peterborough specifically trying to get together. If anybody wants to reach out, again, maybe we can use this as some sort of central point to start that, but to sort of organize or create, get a group together to really try and tackle this issue. And I mean, we're
going to build our own think tank, our Peterborough left-wing think tank, to help build a movement of justice for all. We're going to challenge the Heritage Foundation in that way.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we need to do. Like, if we don't band together, is like if we, I don't want to say, I mean, like, if we just continue to attach ourselves to like personality and like the ego of an individual, and like just let that person do all the work, and like someone stands, even if we do band together around someone, and then that person stands up for the select board position, I feel like we also have to remember that as organized, like when we organize that position, we have to continue to work with this person as close as we can and hold them accountable. Yes. And make sure that they not, sounds a little bit predatory, but like make sure that they stay on our side, because we have propped them up to this position. We are their constituents. We are their, like, the base that they have now gained power off of, and we have to like in choosing a person and recognizing all of those things and taking in all those factors, also like remember that we have to put in the work too as citizens, and like we have to also stand side by side with this person to not only hold them accountable but make sure that they actually get the work done and don't just use this position as like a stepping stone or anything like that. That's just exploiting it for their own personal interest or their own personal goal. Like it has to be about changing this community and bringing justice for Peterborough specifically.
Exactly. Well, and I think the thing about that is that like you're absolutely right. I totally agree. I think the way you deal with that is you search for a candidate who basically says like, I'm not going to make a decision one way or another unless I'm 100% sure that my coalition is in full agreement with it, right? So you're looking for somebody who has a very cohesive understanding of the ideology, like the ideology itself of, you know, democratic socialism, pro-labor, pro-social justice, however you want to label it. I don't care. I don't care about labels. I care about policy. If that person understands the ideological frame for why the policy is good, and then understands exactly what kind of policy is needed and understands how to dismantle policy that's bad, right? And when I say policy, I mean, like, we'll get to it, say the Evans Flat thing. Like, that's a really nuanced conversation. I think it's worth having. And I think if that's something that moves forward, which it sounds like they're going to try to, look, I'm glad that at the very least we had, you know, Ed is probably going to be pro new development in the sense that we could get new housing for that. But realistically, it's still going to be within about how fiscally solvent is this type of a concept or context rather. And that's just not what we're looking for in terms of housing, because we need that's the issue. It's providing housing to people in this town that don't have it and providing like that net for people that need it. And if it's about like boosting the economy or something like that, like that's just not making sure that people have a good the interest rate is low, or they're, you know, like or high after, you know, ownership or whatever. They're getting like 8% interest or something. I don't know what it is, but exactly. You need someone who understands all of that and is actually willing to have those tough conversations with people who you're going to have to work with a lot, Bill and Tyler, to push them in the direction that you want them to be in, that the coalition supports. And that's about like nominating or like running someone who has like the strength to do that. Because if they don't, and if at every conversation, like the private conversation this is the select board will be having, they don't stand up for that, then nothing will change if that person's not strong enough to have those like tough conversations with people. Disagree with them either. Yeah, and it's not just, you know, like you know, it's that Cornell West thing. You got to be fortified. You know what I mean? Like you got to have that fortification. You also have to be able to have that that knowledge of your group. You know what I mean? That knowledge of the people that you're representing. Like if you know, I want that person to be able to anticipate what I would say at that meeting when they bring up that issue. Like, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a person that, like, they will be familiar enough with the diversity of opinions within the left to be able to anticipate, okay, like, my think tank has X amount of people in it and they all think this, so I can reasonably project that this is going to be the decision that they want me to make when I'm in office. So not only is there that, but there's also a question of like, if that person hits a point where they're like, no, I really need to go talk to people, that they will just stonewall the whole thing and just shut it down and be like, I'm not making a decision on this until I talk to people. You know, I need to go out and I need to talk to my constituents before I can come back to this meeting. So we're going to do this next month. Like, that's
exactly what we need.
Right.
And Peterborough will appreciate that type of leadership immensely in the long run when this town has now met its potential. And it's like, because that's the kind of leadership we need for the town to do just that. And it's
Exactly.
like, if we keep if we keep just going to the status quo, and if we keep just hitting the pause button and kind of just mulling through the issues and doing only the necessary work, then we're not going to get the stuff that needs to get, like, the needs of the community met.
Right. Yeah. If we're only focused on keeping the lights on and the, the water running, it's like, okay, yeah, but who's fixing the leaky roof?
Right. The floor is breaking. Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, guys. So, yeah, we'll hop back over. We'll see if we can get to this, guys with them talking about what they're going to do with Evans Flats.
Yeah.
All right. Since we've already made up our decision on this, and we did discuss it quite a bit. We've thought about it. It's been on all our minds since Karen sent that letter. We're not going to be taking any questions or comments this evening regarding this. We'll have plenty to talk about it in the coming future. We do thank everyone for. Oh, do I have an all in favor on that vote? Aye. All right, had to get that officially out of the way. So thanks everybody for the support and the guidance that we get from you, and the great recommendations we've heard on this. It's a tough job, and Ed's certainly been very capable in the past. I worked with him for 3 years, and I think we can carry on with the good things for our town. Anything to add, Rodney or Nicole? Or
no, just that we look forward to working with Ed again as much as you do.
I think he's a great choice.
I also think that it's a great choice.
Yeah, and he said yes.
Great choice, folks.
He knows what we're up against, and yeah, admirably said yes. All right, moving on to old business. We have the follow-up on Evans Flats discussion, the proposal for affordable housing complex that we had heard about. Nicole, are you going to explain what our next steps are, or Rodney?
Sure, I'm happy to explain that. So you did hear a proposal or an idea that was put together by volunteers. It had raised some very interesting possibilities for Evans Flats. Of course, Evans Flats has been studied many times over the past couple decades at this point, as far as how it can be best used or reused. That site, currently the buildable site at the end of Evans Roads, there's two pieces of town land called Evans Flats. There's the piece that the highway garage occupies, and then it goes across a little bit of a wetlands, and then there's another upland piece at the end of Evans Roads. That is the piece that we're currently talking about. To do anything there, the selectmen will need to consider whether or not they would like to pursue selling that property or utilizing it. If the selectmen choose to sell it, they'll need to follow RSA 4114A, which outlines the process. They'll need to consult with the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board before holding 2 public hearings on whether or not to sell the town-owned land. Typically, when the select board has done something like this, selling a piece of town-owned property, they've done one of 3 things. They've either put it out on the open market, they've put it up for auction, or they have done a request for proposal process, which is a more long, drawn-out public process whereby people are able to contribute their ideas to the select board for consideration. Most recently, we did this with the GAR Hall, and of course that yielded some fantastic results.
I'm sure we'll end up in that same boat.
We have a lot going on right now, in addition, of course, to the COVID-19 and everything that we've just talked about, starting the budget process. We also have a very busy presidential election coming up in November. So what we would recommend is that if the board would like to consider Evans Flats, that we take up that conversation later this fall, either just before or just after the presidential elections, to give us all a little bit of time to clear some of the business off our plates before we take up something big like this.
Probably nothing new will get on our plates, right? So,
Right.
Just you wait.
Oh wait, yeah.
Just
September
you
will be
wait,
very
Bill.
interesting for you.
yeah, I mean, I'm I'm fine with that suggestion. I think, you know, the need for affordable housing is today. So I mean, I don't have a problem addressing that sooner rather than later.
Damn straight.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
Yes,
actually,
it
the
is.
affordable housing issue has been going on for decades. So, you know,
Yes,
at least this is an interesting proposal, and we're moving towards something. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to take up when we do get to it. Looking forward to that. I did neglect to mention. Also, did I mention under other business?
Yeah.
Like the lack of urgency. I get it, but like I get it all.
Yeah.
But it's such an urgent issue for so many people in this town, and I'm so thankful to hear Bill thinks that it needs to happen today, and I think that I'm thankful to hear that Tyler also agrees that needs to happen. But there needs to be a greater sense of urgency around people that need housing in this community, and like, I know I'm sure you've talked about it before, but it's just a little frustrating to see, you know, firsthand how they talk about these issues. And I remember like watching the last housing Zoom call that happened, or I forget exactly what that housing meeting. And it was the same thing. It was it was people who were urgent about these issues fighting with people who just did not seem like they actually cared about the issue at all. And I feel like sort of the same thing can be applied here with the lack of urgency that they're presenting with on such an important issue.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's because the issue doesn't touch them. Like
exactly.
That's it. And it goes back to that thing that we were talking about, like I think on like the first episode of Deep Dive with lack of empathy and increased earnings. Like the more you earn, the less you care. Like that's proven, right? Like we know that's how that works. And look, I appreciate that Bill and Tyler both understand exactly how serious this problem is, in the sense that they cop to it right there. But the real issue is that they aren't about to be homeless, right? Like they're not, like, okay. I often use my own experiences because it's like the only thing that I feel comfortable about. Like I don't want to speak on somebody else's anecdote. Like I feel like I have a right to talk about whatever I go through. And like, okay, I have lived with my partner in a studio apartment for the past 3 going on 4 years now. With, you know, and before we moved there, we had pets. At the time, we had 2 cats and a dog. Since then, one of our cats has passed away, which sucked. But to pack 2 humans and 2 animals into a studio apartment, like 500 square feet, right? And it's a nice apartment. Don't get me wrong. Like, as far as studios go, it's a nice studio. But that is not sustainable for a half decade. Like, speaking from personal experience, like, that'll make you lose your mind. And the fact that I'm out here looking all the time for a better living situation. And most of them are just outside of my price range. The ones that do show up. And when they do, it's like once every 2-3 months, I see something that's like really going to work that appears, and then it's gone like that. You know, it's just, when I got the place that I'm in right now, it never even made it to market. I was lucky enough to get recommended to my current landlord by someone in town who happened to know the person that was living in the apartment and was moving out, and was like, oh yeah, I know someone who's moving out. Let me put you in touch with this. So it was like, it never even got to hit the market before we got there, and we're like, yep, here's the money, boom. And that's how fast the transactions go in this town. Like, that's how quick it is. People are showing up. They've got money in hand. They're going to take it. So the availability of an apartment on the market is just like nil. And if you're not in a situation where you're like, okay, my living deal is going to fall apart. Like, I'm going to literally go insane if I can't find a better place to live within a certain amount of time. if you're not experiencing that, then you do not understand the urgency, or you're not very close to somebody who's going through that. You don't understand the urgency. You could even be close to somebody who's going through that and be so myopic about your own lens on things and your own position that you still don't even listen to him, even though you're sitting there saying, I'm an ally. You know, like, it's... Sorry, I am popping off right now.
I've had the same we've had the same experience living in this town, and I'm super grateful to have been able to find places every 4 years, but we still have to skip around and move around, because every place we go to, those low-income houses that we could afford are owned by landlords who, and this is anecdotal from my experience personally, who do not care about their tenants largely, and do not care about the properties that they hold, because they are getting $300, $400, $500 a month from rent from the 2 tenants that they have in this apartment that's decrepit and going away. So it's not only like, of course we're appreciative that we have a house and a house over our head and we can stay warm in the cold winters, but like at the same time, every winter is hard because we have to also pay for all of these other things on top of it. And then the house is also breaking up. The floor will go through, water damage, all of these other things that we have to deal with as renters because of a terrible landlord. And that's just the experience of my family, of other families that I know. And we've been lucky enough to find houses and move around and stay in town for so long, but it has been a super challenge. And we only are, and like just you said, we're only lucky to be able to do it because we know so many people in town, and we're able to get those connections with people who are like, yeah, I'm moving out here. You can go here. You can have my house. And it's like a lot of switching houses and like going in between houses just because we have to get out of this house. And now we have to move to this one. And then it becomes, we have to get out of this one. It's just a never ending cycle of trying to stay in this community that we love. And it's so impossible to do when everything is stacked against you in your attempt to do so. It's just a ridiculous situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then on top of that, you're working a service job that pays very little, and you're not making any money in the winter because there's like almost no people coming out, and then just a whole lot of things stacked on top of each other that keep working class people from thriving in this town.
Right. Okay. So yes, you're absolutely right on the money. So I actually did. So, and you were talking about landlords don't care about people, and I am super, super lucky that my current landlord is actually a really nice guy. And like
mine too.
Yeah.
Just want to preface that.
No, yeah.
My landlord, very nice lady. I love her. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are indeed good landlords in this town, but they're hard to come by. And I intend to follow up, and it's something that I've been wanting to focus on to get more information on, is sort of like what people's experiences with Joe Caracapa's properties are like, because I've heard some mixed opinions there. But yeah, but I really So a while back, I was digging into Keystone Management, which is the group that manages the Riverview properties. And so, and I will throw it up on the screen for folks so that everybody can sort of see this. So, okay. This section of the piece that I had been working on, which I never ended up getting a chance to publish it, explains who owns Keystone and talks about Riverview a little bit. So, Keystone Management is based in Concord, but they also manage properties in Maine and North Carolina. They describe themselves as being less about the numbers, more about the people. Okay. They were created June 11th, 1984. Good standing with Secretary of State. registered to Eaton W. Tarbell Jr., who's a lawyer out of Concord at his firm Tarbell and Brodich. They did make contributions to the 2020 Trump campaign. This was back in February. So
of 2019 or
of 2020.
Oh wow.
Or not? Was it? Yeah. It was in February of 2020. So, could very well have donated more since then. His son Miles was listed as vice president, or is listed as the vice president of Keystone. So family dynasty stuff here. Dude had been an assistant VP at Bank of America back in 2005. So we know he comes from the big banking sector. So it's, family business, lawyers, bankers, right? Giving money to Trump. Something that Keystone does is that they have the way they do it is they create a separate LLC for every single property. So the management company itself,
even the individual units on the,
not the individual units on them,
okay,
right?
Okay.
So like Riverview itself, yeah. Right? Like right. Riverview is one business. It's one LLC that's right. managed okay. by another LLC. And so this is very like you're creating shells within shells within shells that insulate their private money a lot. When you're hiding behind multiple LLCs, that's usually a good indicator that you are expecting things to go wrong in those properties, that you're expecting there to be potential lawsuits, and you're protecting yourself from them. But they'll bully folks. They'll just straight bully folks anyways. Raising rent, not, saying that we've got people available when they don't. There's issues with it. Now, it's something to keep in mind with this is that they had there was a fire at the Riverview Apartments, and when the fire department got there, they discovered that Keystone had gone in. Those buildings were built in the 80s. They had discovered that Keystone had gone in and added walls to create a third bedroom, right? Just after the fact. Now, the problem with this is that there's no second means of egress, right? There's no window in these rooms. So in order for those rooms to be legal by fire code, you need another way out of the room, or you need fire suppressants. So what that meant was, like, Keystone's like, dude, no way in hell we're going to cut, like, we're not going to get rid of this third room, and we're not going to cut windows in the side of the buildings right now. Too expensive. So like, okay, well, your other option is to do a sprinkler system. So what does Keystone do? Okay, cool, we'll do a sprinkler system. So but they're hemming and hawing about it because it's, somewhere to the tune of like $250,000, right? Like $250,000, and essentially, like, they went to, like, Chief Walker is going through all of this with them. He's like, look, you got to have this. Like, we just, we can't do anything about this. They said the fire department had no idea how long those rooms were there, or how long they were out of code. He said if the fire hadn't been in one of those units, had it been in a different one, they still wouldn't have found out. So Keystone could have been dodging this code violation for we don't even know how long. And Walker said, like, look, we rely on tenants reporting this stuff. Tenants have to call us and tell us this. Tenants don't want to do that because they don't want to, like, risk backlash from their landlord, which makes sense, right? So
there's a lot of fear in living in a place like Riverview. I know we've lived there, and I know a couple of people that live there. There's a lot of fear involved, and, like, it's just a consistent fear of losing your house,
right,
to the managers. You're just constantly like, I can't do this, can't do that. It is a very hard line to toe, for sure.
Yeah, and so Riverview makes this big investment, and then the town gives them a huge break. They basically offer, like, okay, we'll hook it up for, like, nothing. You know what I mean? Like, we'll just give you this. So we just subsidize these goobers to do work that they should have done back in the 1980s.
To the tune of 250 grand.
Now, I don't know if 250 grand is like, I will have to pull that number back up, but I sort of have to look through a lot of the
fact that we gave the money.
It's about $250,000. It was $250,000 to the project, and then they were like, well, we don't want to pay for the hookup too, and the town was like, all right, well, just in the interest of we can't afford to have, because the whole time, the second the fire happened, right, the fire department came in, and they said, okay, you have to tell all of your tenants living in these rooms they can't use those rooms anymore. So those were that was like a kid's bedroom. So all of a sudden you got a kid sleeping on the couch, right? And they just have to do that for months until Keystone gets it together to get the new pipes installed. Well, sure enough, they get the sprinklers installed. They go with this really the cheapest option. It's iron pipes. They're huge. They're just boring holes through people's apartments. They're not being clear about when they're coming in. People's apartments are they're going into people's apartments without giving them a heads up. The day of, they're coming in a different day, which again is not really legal. And they'll leave a mess. There were a number of people that told me that they had someone was cutting a hole in the ceiling and they just left a whole bunch of drywall dust all over the floor or something like that. So this is what it is for people who are looking for affordable housing in the area. This is the problem. This is anytime someone says, oh, well, we have Riverview or we have, Heatherbrook or blah, 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 go there. Talk to the people who live there. Find out what it's actually like to be in that place. And then you tell me if that's a place that you would live. Because for anybody to say, well, what about this solution? It's would you live there? Because if you wouldn't, then why do you think I should? And that gets into our hierarchy problem, our town caste system. And so I just, for anybody who wants to make the, well, what about Riverview argument, know that the second you say that, anybody on the other side of it is going to say, well, that person is an elitist. And they're probably going to write off a lot of what you say after that. That's just, I don't know. That's just my opinion. And this has definitely been another huge tangent.
But it's a good one. You just laid out exactly what has to happen with the affordable housing argument. People have to understand the reality of people's experience in living in the affordable housing that we currently have and how it needs to be. Not only do we need more affordable housing and we need more apartment options for, just people who need that. We also need to recognize that the experience in these houses is not good and that we have to find ways to address that as well and combat people should be allowed to live comfortably in this town.
Right.
People should it doesn't matter what your income bracket is. You should be allowed to live comfortably in this town without fear of some higher up manager who lives not even in town coming into your house, whether that be Rockbrook, Heatherbrook, any of them, and threatening to evict you or anything like that, or just coming in and saying they're going to fix something and then leaving a mess. That is also not living comfortably. All of these things is just people deserve that basic dignity. And I think once you just kind of reveal the truth of the situation, not that these people in power or the higher people on the top of the hierarchy that exist would necessarily agree if they don't already from hearing these stories, but everyone else will, and we will get most people will sympathize with in hearing these stories, and most people will, if they know about them, do something about it. Because I think a lot of people just don't know, a lot of the kind of people in the middle of this, not at the top of the hierarchy, not at the bottom of the hierarchy, who do have a house, teachers who live in town and stuff, some people who would normally be on the side of the issues that we support, they just don't know about this reality. And once they do, they're going to be a lot more engaged in it. And I think that if you had a person on the select board who was this is the reality of our town. Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is what people are living like. And then they outlined the Rockbrook situation. They outlined the Heatherbrook situation. I think people would respond extremely well to a person in a position like that, saying something like that. And then you could use the bully pulpit you've created from engaging these new people to make that tangible change that would solve that issue.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, it's like, it seems so simple. And it's definitely a lot harder done, a lot harder, like, a lot easier said than done, but it is, I think, something that we need to also think about in terms of like strategy for the next person that we elect to the select board, because they have to be someone who's going to boldly address these really urgent issues in our town for so many people. Because no one should be attacked like that from their landlord or the management of their house. We need people to defend people like that.
Well, it's like there was a woman I spoke with has been living there since, or at the time that I was gathering the information, had been living at Riverview since 2012 with her husband and her son, and lived in 2 different buildings. About 6 months after being there, moved to the unit that they're in now, or were in at time of information gathering, and said during some of the colder winters through 2015 and 2016, they'd set the thermostat at 85 degrees and the room temperature would never go above 56. Like, that's a problem, man. You got a kid in there? Like, that's an 85 is high. That's a high temperature to set your thermostat at, to have it stay that cold. So, like, that's, like, are those windows up to code? Like, what's going on? This is what it's like to live in those spaces. And it's imperative to have, if we want to seriously deal with the, getting a left candidate to try and shoot for that spot, housing is probably, like, yes, obviously, social justice, racial justice, all of that top line priority. What I'm saying is not meant to push that down on the list, but housing really is.
Yeah.
It really is kind of the top line issue for our community right now. It's at the very least on par with the racial and social justice components.
And it's not even untied from the racial or social justice conversation. It's intrinsically a part of it. A lot of the people in this town, the working class people, are the diverse population. We have a diverse population of working class people in this town, and if they can't find housing, then we are not we can't say we're welcoming to people of different backgrounds when we're not welcoming people who have different backgrounds but are just of a lower income bracket and can't afford to live comfortably in this town. That's also a big racial justice issue. Like, housing is a huge racial justice issue, not just in the cities. It's not just about redlining. It's about affluent communities like these not being open to diverse populations who just happen to be working class. And that's a big part of it. Because if people could, I think people would move up here. If there were options. I think people from a whole different, I think a lot of people from across the country would move up here and would like enjoy this place. And it's about creating an open community for them to enjoy it. And right now we don't have that. So, I mean, all of these conversations, like housing and all of these like economic factors play so much into the social justice conversation that you can, I always saw them in the same token. It's like, it's hard for me to like if someone were to ask me like what's your prioritized issues? Like, I don't know. I just like whatever is like whatever I can work on at the time to fix all of these issues that are so connected. It's not like I don't like prioritizing connected issues. Just kind of seems like, I don't know, doesn't seem too productive. Like, if you were to like, these are my top 3 priorities, like I feel like you should present a vision of what you want to do and then the policies behind that vision, instead of like prioritizing just like buzzwords and issues like healthcare, jobs, economy, even housing. Like, just instead of just saying housing, what are you going to do behind housing, and then all of the other things. But,
yeah, no, I think you're spot on, man. And and the other thing too is like, look, this is a take that I think I'm probably going to piss a bunch of people off at this take. I mean, are we like, who the hell are we excluding in our like town welcome committee stuff? I mean, I haven't had a chance to go to one of those meetings, so I don't know what those discussions are like. I've watched some of the EDA meeting stuff. It's like watching bread toast. And it can be difficult to sit through those meetings on YouTube, but I try to do it. My thing is that, look, right now we're like, we've got all this welcoming committee stuff. Who are we bringing into the town right now? We're bringing in like pretty wealthy mid to late 30 somethings who are like, we're looking, we're coming from New Jersey, we're coming from Connecticut, we really, we just thought it was such a beautiful town and we really wanted to come be a part of the community. And who are they? They're the like 30 something white couples. Great, cool. That's nice. Like I'm not against it. What about the people in the town right now that can't get a place? What about the people that were in town a year ago and had to move to another town even though they still work here? What about those people? And the thing about it is, those folks tend to be more on the like artsy, wonky, like creative, different side of just, like these are the types of folks that have helped us develop the culture that we have in town, right? Like that sort of artsy Yankee hippie vibe. Like that's where that comes from. And if right now we are literally alienating the exact identity of the town, the way we're choosing to try and bring people into it. And if we just stopped for a second and we're like, let's fill the town up. If we focus on trying to make sure that we have homes for the people that are already a part of our community, then those folks are likely going to bring in a greater diversity of people. Because their friends, their acquaintances, the people that they work with, the people that they know, that they'll recommend, like, hey, you should come visit, you should come check this out, come stay with me. Like, all of a sudden they've got a home, they can have like a friend come and stay with them, and their friend can come and check out the area. And that, like, like I have any number of friends that are not white, that are, out of this area that would love some sort of like rural America experience. And I think Peterborough is a great town for those type of people. But right now, the biggest pull that we're making is towards just rebuilding that same like white affluent families community. And we're just feeding into the problem. And so that's why I genuinely think that if we were to bounce back and say, let's try and create homes for the people that are already in our community, let's try and figure out ways to retain our population rather than replacing our population, that we might get better diversity just simply from trying to resolve the housing issue. You know what I mean? Like, you might see a less white community. That's
I completely agree with that. Yeah. It's just like working class people not only will bring in a more diverse crowd, but it'll bring in a more caring crowd. It'll bring in a more open crowd that'll actually help to create a sense of community instead of expanding the crowd that just wants to push out those people and push out the alternative crowd and gets angry at them.
Well, and my question
you
is,
hit it on the nail. I mean,
why the hell are we like going out and searching for like these suburbanite people to fill our town up, when instead maybe we could try and figure out a way to like provide homes for refugees?
Yeah.
Like New Hampshire has a great history of welcoming folks, like, people who are seeking asylum, stuff like that. Like, we have a lot of folks like that come to this state that just want to like they just want to have a sense of normal and chill. And like there is like, I mean, I don't know if it's still this way, but I remember when I was growing up, there was a pretty big Cambodian population in town. There were a lot of just Cambodian families, and I went to school, like there were a number of Cambodian kids that I went to Conval with, and it was pretty normal, you know. It was fine. There was no like real difference. But I do remember us being significantly more exposed to Cambodian culture, like through the Mariposa Museum, and they'd have people come up, and you know, they've done mandalas at the townhouse, you know, the big sand mandalas and stuff like that. We've had cultures come in and really expose people in town to these other things. And I look back on that time, and I think one of the best times I ever had at the townhouse was when we were doing like a big, you know, Hindu dance event. And it was like, that was so much fun. And that brought such a dynamic into the community and helped like us to understand that diversity better. You know what I mean? When there were literally only like 2 black kids in the school at the time. I wish that I was exaggerating, but I'm not. Like, that sucks. That there was just like that was the most exposure to external culture that we got in this town. And I really love that. And we could be filling our town. We could be solving the housing problem. And if we're going to bring people into our community, why not be welcoming of other cultures? Why not try to appeal to those humanitarian refugees? Sorry about that. Totally hung up for a second. I was just hoping
I didn't lose you.
No, we're good.
Yeah,
no, every once in a while my computer will just like choke while we're doing a stream, but it's okay. It always comes back. So, but I don't know. What's your take on that? Like, do you think that that's something we should be...
That's exactly what we need to do. And for communities that are 90% white, you gotta do everything you can to expose them to different cultures, to not allow, like, so it doesn't get to a place where, you know, no one knows anything about race and everyone is throwing up their hands saying, well, I didn't know about this until like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Like if we taught about cultures, if we had, and it doesn't even have to be about school, it's about like the town holding those events, those Hindu dances, like the Hindu dance is a perfect example. Like we got to expose people to different cultures. And then not only will we be celebrating the cultures of the diverse cultures that we have in town, it'll be attractive to other diverse populations across the country who are looking for that rural experience that you just talked about, who want to come here and live a quiet and peaceful life in Peterborough, New Hampshire, and just kind of mull around, look at the yard, go to Harlow's every once in a while, and live comfortably. That's the goal for everyone that's living here. And it's just about like creating a space to do so and stop like conversing about the issue when we know that there's solutions about it. Like we know that there's solutions to all these issues. We don't need more task forces. We don't need more committees. We just need more action on the issues. We just need more action on the issues. We just need you to recognize that people don't have housing in this town. There are people that live in your community that are wanting to stay but can't. There are people in your community who are living uncomfortably, who feel unsafe, underrepresented in the government, and a whole host of other very terrible things that you don't want for any person living in a community that you think is so pristine and perfect. But like exposing that, bringing in new cultures and diversifying the town, and like just being accepting of different backgrounds and different perspectives, and not just shutting people down because or not just shutting people down because you feel as though like it's because you live in this quiet town, because you live in this perfect town, that you can't be exposed to anything new or something like that. There's always room for education. There's always room for growth. And it's just, we have a great space in this state to, we can just like, we can all just chill and and it's just like, I definitely agree with your take, and you know,
and it's like, I agree with your point about like everybody just wants the same damn thing, man. Like we all like hanging out in the middle of the woods doing jack. We like seeing nobody.
That's why we live
like
here.
Exactly.
Like, I want to hang out by my fire in my backyard. Just let me do that. Like
I wish that I could explain to the MAGA chuds just how much they have in common with, like, Palestinians. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Like, do you seriously think that, like, your weird, like, get off my property vibes aren't somewhat more, like, echoed by, like, you know, like, the, like, whatever, you know, like, 68-year-old,
right,
you know, Syrian grandma that's like, I just stop setting the fucking bombs off outside of my building, you idiots. Like, I'm just trying to cook my dinner. Like, I just want to live in peace. Like, how do you not see that it's the same thing? Like, like the desire set, it comes from the exact same place. I don't know. I really, really wish that there was a way to, like, connect those dots for people.
Right? I mean, and like, God, it's so obvious as well. Like, you see any of these videos that, like, even a right winger would show you, like, oh, look at this terrible fucking person in the Middle East or whatever, and it's like, hold on, that person is a human being, that he's running around the streets screaming whatever he's screaming because we are, like, bombing his country nonstop, and
we literally killed his wife and child. Like, his wife and baby were blown up by a drone.
Their response is going to be? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, what are you expecting them to like? Just like, if we could get them to somehow like, imagine if Canada was just throwing missiles over the border to New Hampshire and just bombing us nonstop, having us sending in, like, occupying forces and being like, yeah, we just own this now. We just own this now.
Right.
Like, that's the situation that's going on.
We're going to tell you what kind of government you should have. Like,
right. All of these things, like, oh God. And it's just about, like, it's hard to even relate to that mentality because it's so ignorant. Like, it's based in so much ignorance that it's hard to break free of that. And it's like, how do we make you come to that conclusion yourself? Because that's the only way we're going to get you to realize that this is the thing. Me telling you that Palestinian lives matter obviously isn't working. Like,
right.
Me telling you a human life matters isn't working. So how do I make you come to the conclusion that I have by yourself? I mean, how do I make you just use your personal experiences, and how can I relate your experience to their experience,
right,
and just get you to connect the dots? And that's a conversation that national leaders need to be having. It's sad to see that it doesn't seem like they are having it, even leaders like Bernie Sanders, because these people could use their bully pulpit to make some real cultural change in this country that, like, fixes this issue of people being entrenched in their own ignorance. And we could open that up and open up a dialogue by having national leaders start that. But if they're not going to do that, which evidently they're not, we're going to have to do it on a local level, and that's starts with the housing fight.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I mean, and my thing is, like, you know, I guess part of the reason why I'd really, like, I'll be honest about my bigger agenda with the idea of, like, I would love to see us find a way to bring refugees specifically into the community in Peterborough. And I think that comes from, like, okay, if I look at Palestinian culture, or I look at, like, Sikh culture, or I look at, you know, Mexican culture or Cuban culture, or, like, basically, like, any non-traditional, like, non-white culture, for the most part, there's a huge, like, in other countries specifically, there's a big component of family and connection and community, and, like, we're just around each other all the time, and we're doing stuff together, and we're, like, making this or that happen. And that's really disparate in the white rural Yankee community. Like, that's just not, I was just talking to somebody yesterday who is, like, you know, is married someone from a different culture, and she was talking about how his family will just, like, be around all the time, and she was like, it's like, it's okay, like, I know it's okay, but it feels like they're in my business all the time. They're just like, God, just get out of my business. And I'm realizing that, like, I'm the one with the problem in this situation. Like, this, like, what they're doing is fine, and I'm weird for not having this. And so my thing is, like, I would love if we were able to introduce more cultures into our community, because I think that having that component would help educate white folks in Peterborough specifically how to have community. Like, I think we've lost it.
That's it right there. I mean, I've always been hesitant to talk about that, but like, it's so true. White people, just like white culture, and I don't like to separate people like that, but it's true. White culture has created like a really individual sense. If like, once you're 18, you leave my house, and we'll talk to each other 2 times a year, and I'm not going to provide you anything, like any support after you're 18. Like, it's this very weird, like the child has to be separate from the parent, instead of just building a sense of community around, like, this is my family, and we support each other, and we're going to support our friends who have their family, which creates just by default in these communities a very strong sense of community. Like, if you're all in a small town in Pakistan, all these families know each other. I mean, all these families have like they have communal. I don't want to call them events, because I don't know exactly what they are, but like they commune together. Like, these communities, these families that are already communing together individually or like inside their family, are now going to translate that, and do translate that, because that's what happens when you start in the family. You know, it would translate to the society. That translates to the society, and then people commune together, and there's a much greater sense of community in a lot of these places, just because of the way their culture is run. And I definitely agree. Like, it's just about exposing white folks to that type of culture. I think they would be fairly receptive to it, or a lot of people would be. And I think around this town, it's just like, we don't have to do what we're doing we don't have to keep doing what we're doing. Like, there's no reason for us to keep doing what we're doing. We can expose ourselves to different cultures, and adapt using different things from different cultures to create more of a sense of community, to help us. Because if we had a sense of community, then like the housing issue, it wouldn't be like,
it would be a lot easier to sell it.
Right.
You know, it'd be way easier to sell it. Like, absolutely.
It would just be like, you'd be able to go to person better, and you'd be like, look, Jim, whatever. Like, I need a house. Like, we're all living here. I need a house. But, you know, this is, I'm gonna post about it on Facebook instead or whatever, and I'm gonna get angry at you about it.
Oh, sure.
That's the way it goes. Oh, you need a house? Well, there's Heatherbrook.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I got these apartments over on this north side of town, but they're
look, the
choose
thing
between an apartment or a job.
Right. Yeah, and you know, and I guess like sort of a nod to the next deep dive episode that we're gonna do, but it makes me think of I brought it up with a number of people, but Society the Spectacle by Guy Debord. At one point in there, he lays out this concept of united through separation, right? This idea that like we are united in our lonely experiences, but that doesn't actually create unity. Like, that doesn't create community. Like, it creates an illusion or a facade of community, and or shared experience. And I think that's like, if there is one, like, when considering it this way, when considering the idea of social fabric, the construction of social fabric within a community, right? It's my opinion that Debord's read on the spectacle applies very, very, it maps very well to this notion of a broken culture amongst white folks, where we have been so inundated, to your point about individualism, for so long that we only experience everything else through our own experience. We don't try to experience other things through an empathetic experience. we only are able to take another's feelings and map them to our own, as opposed to like mapping a dissociated set of emotions and feelings that we understand because we've experienced them to something else. It's not the same thing as literally taking your experiences and comparing them apples to apples. It's just saying like, yeah, I know what feeling angry feels like. You're telling me that this feels angry. Okay, I'm going to think about being in this situation and imagine feeling angry and then try and embody and empathize with this concept, right? That the way that we've decided to go about doing culture here, the separations, right, only further separates us. And there's these cultural institutions within non-white communities that that inherently break that down. And we just don't have anything like that in the white community. I say that from my own personal experience, like going through, like growing up, being, and as an only child too, being brought into plenty of other spaces to try and create community and never feeling like I fit in any of them. You know what I mean? Like, and that might be in large part because the places that I was going, like maybe that was my mindset and that was the mindset of my mom or my dad or like whatever at the time. But that's not necessarily the mindset that these other families had. So I couldn't get that experience. So I was always like dealing with this weird disjointed, like, I don't want to repeat the word experience, but just, you know, interaction with my surroundings that I, you know, when I really look back at like growing up through the 90s and dealing with all that stuff, I think, yeah, the lack of cohesion amongst like Yankee white culture is bad, or it's there's a serious lack of it. And I was able to see and experience it and understand it through seeing other cultures do it correctly. Like, I never once got that from white folks. I had to leave. I had to go other places and get it that way.
And it's super, like that thought process, which, you know, I've had to break free of as well, living, like growing up in this type of community. I've recognized that I've like had to, I've grown up in that type of like, in that mentality, and I've had to like sort of break free of it, and I still deal with it a lot. But it's like, it's a dehumanizing mentality, because it's like when you look at another person, it's just like from your own experience, and it's all self-centered. Then a lot of the time you can look at that, you like, not you as like you, but yeah, like
the royal.
You as a person,
the royal
would
you,
look
man.
at under the person, exactly, like as like just something that you can use to your own advantage. And like if you're angry, and I'm going to translate that as anger, and I recognize that you're angry and I can understand that feeling, but if your anger doesn't relate to my experience at all, or like if your anger doesn't affect my experience, or if your sadness doesn't like affect my life, a lot of the time people will just kind of be like, oh, you're angry, okay, and then just kind of like not engage with that person. It's a dehumanizing thing, unless they can get something out of that person being angry, or they can get something out of helping that person solve their anger issues or solve their sadness, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not even something we consciously do. I think it's just a result of an individualist mentality. Like, it's just like when you're self-centered and you think only for your own benefit and your own goals, and you're thinking of, and you are putting out into the world a perspective of everything is based off of what I'm seeing, and like it's off of like it's all like my reality is it. And then you can use another, it's just if everyone's using each other, then it's just like constant push and pull between another person, and nothing will get done. And then the society starts to break down after too much of that, I feel like.
Right.
Because I don't think that society can function. And I think a lot of that is what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we're there.
Year.
I think
we're actually there right now. And I think that after so many decades of this happening, we're just at such a tension point where everyone's been using everybody, and and no one can figure it out. Everyone's depressed, and everyone's feeling scared of it, and
people are starting to shoot each other.
And then people are starting to shoot each other. Violence happens. People start getting like, oh, you are the Antichrist. You are the total antithetical you represent everything that I'm against.
Yeah.
And then that's when you can get into is like people shooting each other, Kenosha events and all that other stuff. It's if you can't expose local communities, and that's the only way I think you're going to do it if you don't have a national leader who's standing up and getting that done. If you can't expose local communities to different cultures and solve this like underlying societal problem of individuality, then we're gonna see a breakdown in what we've created, and people are, it's gonna be fast and hard, I think. Yeah. Like I agree with Chris. I agree with like what Chris Hedges says on the matter. It's like all of the economic factors that he talks about play into the fact, or the societal factors that we just discussed play into the economic factors that he talks about when he says that America is on its farewell tour. And it's all of these things are playing into it together, and it will very quickly become a very dangerous situation. And I agree that we're living in it right now.
Yeah,
it's a terrifying thought, but
it really is. It really, really is. And I just want us to kind of like to just sort of say, we will do the discussion about the town clerk on another episode, because that's the whole other ball of wax. And I want to hear the town report on it. But I think this is actually a good place for us to stop for today. But what I want to leave folks with is this wonderful tweet right here, because I think the insanity of what we are discussing is just sheerly encapsulated in this tweet about like lack of meaning. Right now, Bosch Carstens Kara, the editor of Jacobin, retweeted this with the comment, "Words mean nothing anymore." And I agree completely, because like what the hell is this? Like, really, what the hell is this? Is it, I love the idea that Joe Kennedy is a Leninist. Like,
right. Or that Marxy is a Trotskyite or something.
Yeah.
A Trotsky in the United States Senate.
What? Like, this is it. Is that, and this is like this insane verbal separation and like just destroying the meaning of words and destroying the meaning of anything and separating everybody.
It's the complete breakdown of truth.
Right.
There is no fundamental truth. There is no I know a lot of people were talking about this, and like, if Donald Trump is president again, there won't be any basis of truth. I think we've already passed that point.
Yeah.
I think that there actually is no basis of truth, and it's dependent on your own perspective, going back to the individuality back. It's people's own perspective. And it just so happens that some people in power were able to propagandize a lot of people into creating their perspectives around their own agenda and goal, which is why you see like a divide between the Trump and Biden people. That's what it is. It's just people who do have that same individual thing, applying that to the Biden Trump, and then applying their own person, and the Biden Trump thing becomes their personality. And then it's like,
right.
Ooh, well, here we are. We are in a state where no one believes, where there's no fundamental facts. It's
just nothing. Yeah.
It's just nothing. It's just nothing. Words.
And I want folks to understand too that when you and I are out here doing these streams and we're talking about this stuff, right? We're not labeling anybody. I'll oftentimes say like, oh, the neoliberal agenda, and that sounds very nebulous, and it sounds very much so like I'm trying to like attack some sort of big other, right? And that's actually not what's happening, as much as people may want to believe that that's exactly the way we're going about this, and we're just looking for our own version of enemy, right? Use words like Trotskyite or Leninist or fascist or whatever the hell. Use these words to create points within a broad spectrum, and understand that, like, I want folks to understand that every single conversation we have on this channel is transitional, right? It's always flowing from one space to the next. We could easily, literally, we're on here talking about like, well, we kind of missed the ball last week. Here we are owning up to it. So like, there's always this space, and there's never like a strict adherence to a certain label. Like when I say MAGA chud, right? Like I don't have a specific image in my head of what a MAGA chud looks like. I just don't, because that's not an identity. It is a one of many mindsets that a person can have simultaneously. And that is the big confusion that people have about ideology, right? That you can hold and have multiple ideologies at the same time. Oftentimes you can have contradicting ideologies and hold them at the same time, because people don't, like, maybe you are conscious of those differences and you're experiencing cognitive dissonance over it, and it's causing you a lot of stress, or you are completely oblivious to it. You just haven't even encountered the cognitive dissonance yet and don't even know to not feel comfortable, right? Like, and all of these conversations exist within that space, and they also exist within the concept of, like, to go back to like a really early point that was made in my conversation with Leaf, is like, nobody is beyond redemption. Like, everybody has a chance to be good. You know what I mean? Like, I'll give everybody a shot, but like, the worse you did, damn well expect the more I'm going to expect you to show up to the table and disclose literally everything. Like, the worse off you were. If you want to get into good graces, you got to make that up, period. But I'm always down to give somebody some space to try and figure something else out. You know what I mean? Or to make that movement. If we're being critical of something here, if we're being critical of the town and we're saying, you know, like, we really need to find a way to get refugees in because, like, the culture isn't working. It's not saying, like, oh, white people, your culture is bad, right? I'm not saying that. Like, I think everything has problems and benefits, right? There's plenty of things that I love about white Yankee culture. You know what I mean? Like, literally, I was just having this conversation recently about, like, the way I like to do interior design. And it's like the way I'll decorate a room. It's like, I couldn't be the, like, more obvious New Englander. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I am. Like, you know, I base the font for the friggin' channel off of the almanac. You know what I mean? Like, I can't help myself. So, like, there's parts of it that I absolutely love. And it's not like, I don't believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I guess is the point. You know what I mean? So it's like, and I'm grateful to have you on today, and just in general to have these conversations, because I feel like it can be tough to sort of get all the way down this rabbit hole with people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm grateful for the space you've provided. I mean, thank you. I mean, like, we're all really appreciative of, like, the local journalism you're doing in town, and it needs to, that's one of them. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, I think.
Well,
local
I
journalism,
appreciate it. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, like, I definitely agree with everything you said. Like, we just need, it's totally transitional, and it's like we're doing this off the fly. Like, we're doing this because we genuinely care. Like, we have long-term goals. Like, we want, you know, certain candidates to get in office. We want certain policies and implemented and such.
We want Medicare for all. We want, yeah,
right.
Exactly.
We have a vision for the future. That is true. But we do care so much sometimes that we get wrapped up in, like, the moment to moment basis of it, and that's what, like, these conversations show. It's like, we've kind of documented over the last summer the experience of a local activist and local activism in Peterborough, dealing with the select board, how that process, like, in a kind of an unprecedented way. I don't think that there's ever been something on the internet that details this process like that before. We're exposing how gunked up the system is. And it's just about, like, yes, we are going to make mistakes, but at the end of the day, we genuinely do care about this community, and we're going to continue to fight, no matter if we make mistakes or not, to have a community that we love. You know, that's it.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, to chill out by the fire as a New Englander.
Exactly. You know? Y'all heard it from Jonah right here. follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit that little bell for notifications. Become a supporter on Patreon. Like, support this nonsense. You just heard it. We've documented local activism with the select board in a way that nobody else on the internet has. This is legendary stuff, folks. So definitely.
And check out the next deep dive.
Yes, definitely. And Jonah and I will be back. Like, I'm gonna catch up with you later this evening about that, and we'll go over. I have a whole mess of links that I need to send.
Perfect. Okay.
Awesome, man. Cheers. All right,
great.
cool. Well, it was great talking to you today, Jonah. And
Great talking
all right,
to you too,
folks,
Carter.
we will catch y'all. Take care, everybody. Peace.